Firstly, the issues faced in Indian economy, various issues are there, starting off with the slowdown. So the recent slowdown in the Indian economy happened during the COVID-19, where we saw the negative growth for the Indian economy. But when it comes to the core idea of issue, or you can say the core issue which is there in the Indian economy, it starts from the unemployment or the lack of job creation in the country. So according to the data which we have right now, we are having two types of, you can say, job related issues. One, unemployment, where we do not have the opportunity to grab a job. Underemployment, you want a particular job in your domain only, from where you have passed, supposedly you have done the educational qualification for the doctorate, but you are doing some menial job, menial tasks which involve certain low level administration. Fine. So that is a mismatch in your educational qualification and the actual job which you are doing. So underemployment is happening, or it is prevalent in our country. So for the COVID-19, we have one data which is important to highlight, that how the negative growth can impact and how the unemployment rate are interlinked with that particular negative growth. So over 1.8 crore salaried jobs were lost between April to July 2020. When we talk about the unemployment rate in August 2020, it was 7.4%. And the latest data after that states that right now we have somewhere around 6.3% as the growth in employment generation. So 7.4% was the unemployment rate in 2020, but right now the growth in the employment creation is 6.3. When you talk about the NSO's data during that particular time period, it was 4.1% for the unemployment rate. The major part which we must focus on is the primary sector, because huge potential was expected out of the agricultural sector, but ultimately we were unable to gain the momentum in the primary sector, and it led to a failure of the growth story which was expected. So when we talk about the agricultural sector, although more than 50% of India's population is dependent on the agriculture, that is they are being employed in this sector, less than 16% is the contribution of this sector in India's GDP. So despite the recent growth in India's GDP, the agricultural sector has not shown any progress. According to the economic survey, the agricultural and allied activities in India have experienced the average annual growth rate of 4.6%. So if you add on the 6 years growth and do the average of that particular number, you will find the growth as only 4.6%, which is a very low number, taking into account the large population which is involved in this particular sector. The agriculture sector's contribution to India's GDP has shrunk over a period of time, and when we talk about 90s, it was approximately 35%. Now it is only 15%. So less than 16% is the contribution towards our GDP when we talk about the agri and allied sectors. See, whenever there is a mismatch between the population involved and the contribution to the GDP, it is an alarming situation. What are the reasons for that? First of all, we do not have the responsibility, or you can say there is no accountability on any of the stakeholders who are involved in the primary sector. Various stakeholders are there, be it the farmers themselves, be it the government, or for that matter some external agencies as well. Nobody is accountable or held accountable for the low growth. That is the reality. Second point, the literacy level are not high. Let's just face the reality. When we talk about the rural areas, today also there are n number of rural areas in our country where education is either not provided or a substandard of education services has been maintained. Ultimately, the people who are not being qualified, well qualified, they will switch to some manual work, some manual laborers will be there, and they will get stuck in the agricultural sector only. They won't be able to surpass the bridge from agricultural sector to the services sector, and this number will keep on growing. That maximum population is involved where? In the agricultural sector, and it is detrimental to the economic growth of our country again. So next point is your poverty elevation. We need to eradicate the poverty from the country. And what is the benchmark when we talk about the poverty? Who defines this particular poverty? So according to World Bank, if you are earning equal to or less than $3 per day, then you are termed as poor or you fall under the poverty line. Here 1.90 has been written deliberately because all of you who are studying from the books, it might be there as 1.90. It is there as 1.90 in your book, but it has been changed twice. Once it has been made 2.5, and now the latest number is $3 per day. This is the number which you must remember for your November exam. Okay, November 2025. Why? Because updates till June 2025 will be asked, and this amount has been revised in June only, that is last month. Okay, so extreme poverty you are living if you are not earning more than $3. According to the data in 2011, in India, we had 268 million people as poor. And when we talk about the data of Planning Commission, which is highly important, question can directly be asked from this particular data, what population or what rural population or urban population falls under the poverty? So rural population, the percentage is 25.7. For urban areas, it is 13.7%. This is highly important, very, very important, along with the limit prescribed by the World Bank, that is $3. Next, the programs, various programs are there for poverty alleviation in our country, and it starts from the IRDP, Integrated Rural Development Program is the first one, from where we will be so IRDP, Integrated Rural Development Program is there. Integrated Rural Development Program is there, and when we talk about this particular program, it starts with the development of rural areas. Fine. Next, we have the Jawahar Gram Samriddhi Yojana, that is JAIIB. Here you will find one thing, that after the Samriddhi Yojana has lapsed, we have your NREGA scheme, that is Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Yojana. Jawahar Rozgar Yojana of 80s was further extended to your NREGA scheme. National Food Security Mission, National Rural Urban Livelihood Mission, this is the fourth one, which ensures that the food requirements of our rural as well as semi-urban areas are being met. Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, along with that JAIIB CAIIB Yojana will be there in the rural areas. For Jan Dhan Yojana, financial inclusion. For JAIIB CAIIB Yojana, again the nutritional requirements, which was earmarked after the COVID hit our country. Then we have Pradhan Mantri Street Vendors Atmanirbhar Nidhi, that is PM Swanidhi, which will be there for all those street vendors who were hit because of the COVID-19. And the updates are also there, not that important for the examination, just you need to remember that you will be procuring the MC certificate, the municipal corporation certificate from the vendors and the KYC, and this particular scheme will be a part of SIDBI's initiative. Fine. We'll be talking about price levels, along with that quantity demanded or quantity supplied. So two type of quantity will be studied, that is quantity demanded or quantity supplied. From here you will find the reference of this particular chapter, that is demand and supply. In case you want to have a direct correlation between the price level and the quantity demanded, you must think like a consumer, because demand will be created by the consumers. Okay, so consumers will be creating this particular demand, and the supply will be ensured by the business entities. Okay, business entities will be supplying whatever demand has been made by the consumers or the market forces. So when we talk about the relation between quantity demanded and the price, so as the price will rise for a particular commodity, the corresponding quantity demanded will be lesser, right? You yourself can assume as a customer, if a particular commodity is at higher prices, you won't be considering buying that particular commodity at least today. You will either delay or postpone your consumption, or for that matter, what you will do, you will not buy at all. Okay, so there is an indirect correlation between the price level of a commodity and the demand which will be created by the customer. So in effect, if I plot the graph between price and quantity demanded, you will find what? Inverse correlation. So the graph will be downward sloping. Fine. Similarly, for supply, which will be ensured by the business entities, just pause for a while, think about it, that a particular commodity is there in the market and it's a hot selling product. Okay, it is a very hot selling product right now. Consumers are buying it like anything. So as a supplier, you want what? Maximizing the profit, right? That is the motto of running a business. So since it's a hot selling product, first instinct of yours will be to increase the supply, so that the product which is already being procured by the customers at high price, they will buy it more and the profit will come to you in huge number. So in effect, we can say that the relation between prices or the price level is directly proportional to the supply. So increasing the price, or a pricey item will be sold more by the suppliers. Okay, so direct relationship between the price and quantity supplied. So upward sloping graph will be plotted. These are the basics when we talk about supply and demand. If you have understood this, I do not see any point that why you cannot comprehend with whatever we will be studying now. Still, if you have doubt, you can just ask me in the comment section. So here you can see for yourself price and quantity. So when we talk about the demand curve, or for that matter the slope of the demand curve, it will be downward sloping. The blue one represents the demand. The upward sloping, or the direct relationship between supply or the quantity supplied and the price, the red one. And the intersection of these two graphs will be known as equilibrium point, where the suppliers as well as customers have no specific reason to change the price or to ask for the change. No modification is required, neither from your customer end nor from your supplier side. Okay, that is the equilibrium point. So in introduction, if you are through with this concept, directly what is the aim of studying supply and demand? So that you can forecast the price levels, forecast the market demand, forecast the market supply, overall the market mechanism in the future dates. How you will do that? Via price and quantity demanded or quantity supplied. Okay, now one basic concept is there about the market demand. What do we mean by market demand? Simply stated, let's take the example of your hometown. you have n number of shops. Okay, let's suppose shop 1 is for the apparels. Okay, it is selling the apparels along with accessories. So high demand is there, and the demand is being created by various individuals who are buying the items from this particular shop. So I1, the individual one, will be buying, let's suppose, clothing item 1. Then trousers will be bought by individual 2. Individual 3 will buy supposedly a fancy hat, so on till individual n, who is interested in accessories, or for that matter you can say wallet. Next in your vicinity is shop 2, which is specifically for medicines, right? So based on the weather of your state, you can assume that individual 1 will be having, let's suppose, cough. So the demand of the cough syrup will be there in the shop 2 by individual 1. Individual 2 will buy certain other products, maybe some product which will enhance the wellness, overall wellness. Individual 3 for, let's suppose, some medicine prescribed by the ortho, and so on till individual n, who is buying the food product for his or her baby. So overall, the individuals are having different demands in different shops. Shop 3 has all the products related to your sports, okay, related to sports, and individual 1 requires a hockey stick for playing hockey, right? Individual 2 is a cricket fan, and he or she is influenced by the recent knock of Indian captain on English land, so they want to buy a cricket bat. Along with that, you have so on till individual n, who is a professional TT, table tennis player. So what I am trying to say is, there are 3 shops here, and like that you have n number of shops in your local area wherever you are residing. If I combine all these shops, I will have what? I will have one market. Okay. So these individual demands, whatever demands are there, if I club them using the shops, you will have what? The demand of that particular market, and directly it corresponds to the market demand. Okay. So fundamental building block for the demand is individual preference, whatever the individuals have preferred. And as we have seen in the initial discussion, the market demand is directly proportional to the price, fine. So whenever we are plotting the demand with the price, the quantity demanded with the price, we will have a downward slope. So indirectly related to the price, as the prices are rising, demand will fall. So you will have the downward slope. Okay. Next, when we talk about the another concept, that is demand schedule and curve, it is nothing but the representation. Whenever you are representing the price against the quantity demanded in a tabular form, in the form of a table, then you will say that this representation entails to the demand schedule. Okay. As the prices are rising, quantity demanded is reducing, 20, then 15, 15, then 12, then 10, and then 9. As the prices are moving up, the demand is less. Now once you have this particular data with you and plot these data points on a particular graph, that is the graphical representation of this particular table, you will get what? A curve which is downward sloping. So this particular graphical representation of demand schedule will be known as demand curve. Okay. So for demand, it will be downward sloping. When you talk about supply schedule, it will be upward sloping like this, the red one being the supply curve. Now one more concept is there when we talk about demand, that is the law of demand. Simply stated, what we have studied, as the price will rise, the demand will be lower. That is the simple premise for your law of demand. Okay, rising price leads to lesser demand of any kind of commodity. That's a general law. But when we talk about some exceptions here, you will find two kind of exceptions derived by two economists. One, Robert Giffen, another by the economist Thorstein Veblen. So Robert Giffen will say that law of demand, I agree that when the prices will rise, demand will be lower. But in my country, in Ireland, Mr. Giffen was from Ireland, what I have observed that whenever there is a price rise of potatoes, it being the staple diet of my native people, there is no reduction in the quantity demanded despite of whatever price level has been increased. So he in turn tries to comprehend the situation and came or arrived at one conclusion that for all those household items where we do not have any other alternate, or for that matter they are necessary to run our livelihood, no matter what the price hike is there for that particular commodity, demand will not be slow or low, it will remain the same. So for all those common items, household items, when we talk about the exception to the law of demand, we are talking about the Giffen goods, also known as the inferior goods. Why inferior? Because the other category which has been defined by Mr. Thorstein Veblen, it talks about the luxury items, be it the luxury bags, the Hermes bag, the Aldo bag, iPhone, or for that matter Ferrari or whatever supercar you can imagine. So according to Thorstein Veblen, if a particular consumer is spending XYZ amount on these luxury items, they will spend again on that particular item if some updation is happening in that particular luxurious item. Why? Because it is a status symbol for them, and no matter what is the price hike for those particular items, they will spend the amount from their pocket time and again. Even if the prices will rise, demand will not fall at all. Instead, sometimes we have seen the demand will rise so that you can have that status in your society. So when we talk about the inferior goods, Giffen goods, exceptions to the law of demand. When you talk about the luxury items, it is the Veblen goods. Okay. On 4th of May, the IFS exam was held, May 2025, I am telling you. There, one direct question was asked from the Veblen goods, that a pattern has been observed while buying the luxury items, and the consumption is being described as the conspicuous consumption. So who has given a particular concept based on this conspicuous consumption? Correct answer was Thorstein Veblen. Now what is this conspicuous consumption? When I talk about conspicuous, it is noticeable. You can easily notice and distinguish between that particular item and the rest. If you are driving a supercar, do you think that it will be in your city with everyone? Nobody. Mostly the chances are there that nobody will be having that particular supercar what you are owning right now. So that particular car, that particular commodity will be noticeable, and the consumption of that particular commodity or item is the conspicuous consumption. Okay. So this was it from my side. If you have any kind of doubt, you can just ask me. The question, the simple question, when the price of commodity is raised, buyers tend to buy less of the commodity. This is known as what? Law of diminishing marginal utility, law of supply, law of demand, none of the above. We have just seen with the rise of price, the demand will fall, known as the law of demand. So correct answer will be option B. what do we mean by money supply? So simply stated, if we are talking about a particular time duration, for that particular time interval only, we can define the money supply. It's not a concept which you can define holistically for entire, you can say 1950s till today. You have to add up for a particular time duration. That's the first and the foremost thing which you need to understand. Secondly, when we talk about the publication of the money supply, then it depends upon the fortnightly basis. Why? Because RBI publishes the data fortnightly basis. That is, after every 15 days, you will be able to know the actual level of money supply in our country. So the basic definition refers to the stock of all the type of money available with the public at a given point of time. Time is of essence here when we talk about the definition of money supply. Stock refers to what? The currency in the form of notes as well as coins plus the deposits. That is also very, very important. So in the definition of a particular measure of money supply, you will find two things. One, where you only consider the demand deposit. Secondly, you will be considering both the demand deposit as well as the time deposit, and where you are having a holistic picture of the deposits in a country, you will say that this is known as the broad money. For us it is M3, and for maximum countries also it is M3 only. You might see one or two components here and there for other countries, but yes, more or less the measure will remain the same, that is M3. So starting off our discussion with M0, why do we define a particular measure of supply, that is money supply, as M0? Because it is a buffer. Always remember, it acts as a buffer for the unforeseen circumstances. If a particular economy is having a negative growth and for a long duration of time it is projected that the economic scenario will remain like that only, then you must have certain buffer in order to sustain your economy, and this particular M0 will be providing you with that reserve. That is why it is also known as reserve money or high powered money. So M0, what all components are there? These components are important for all the measures of money supply, be it M0, M1, M2, M3 or M4. Question in the examination will hover around these measures of money supply only, and they will be giving you, the examiner will provide you with the information about, let's suppose, one component, two components, you have to calculate the third one, like that. So M0, it includes the currency in circulation. It is the entire currency which is in circulation, including the currency with the public as well as in the banks. When you talk about the bankers deposit with the RBI, the reserves, fine, SLR, CRR, whatever being held by the RBI. So quick question for you here, whether CRR is being held by the RBI or not, do let me know in the comment section, or is it just SLR or vice versa. Next we have other deposits with the RBI, wherein you will find three components. First of all those deposits done by the financial institutions, when we talk about the transactions which are being done using a third party or a financial intermediary like primary dealer. Then the balances in the accounts of foreign central governments or the foreign central banks. Next we have the accounts of international agencies which are providing funding to our country, be it IMF or for that matter any other financial organization. So these three clubbed together form the third part, that is other deposits with the RBI. Next we have M1, wherein you will find 100% liquid money. Why? Because this particular component entails every amount of money which is in circulation, be it the currency with public. We have seen currency in circulation. How you will arrive at currency with the public? By subtracting the bank's deposits in the particular currency which has been held in the entire economy. So currency in circulation minus the cash held by the banks will give you currency with the public. Demand deposit with the banking system, you will be adding that also along with the other deposits with the RBI. So from here you will find a reference of demand deposit. It is also known as narrow money. Why? Because of the opposite nature as compared to the broad money. That is why it is known as narrow money. Nothing else is the reason. What is broad money? Simply, you are adding the time deposits also in the M1. Okay, M1 plus time deposits, you will get the broad money, that is M3. Next, when we talk about the other types of measure of money supply, it will be your M2, where M1, the narrow money, will be one of the component, but along with that, post offices, the saving deposits in the post offices will also be considered. So M2 will be equal to M1 plus the post office savings. Okay, so M2, here what you can remember or what kind of question can be asked, that is also one of the common doubt which students have. Mostly for M2, the type of question revolves around the saving deposits, and there will be 2 or 3 components given in the question where they will ask you demand deposit with the banking system, then term deposit will also be given to you, plus they will give you the saving deposit with the post offices, and you have to decide whether to include the time deposit or not, because time deposit is a component in M3. Like that, confusing question can be asked in the exam. Next, when we talk about the money supply, that is the broad money M3. Why it is known as the money supply? Because ultimately RBI implements the policy related to the money supply using this particular measure of money supply. So broad money will include M1, which has everything except for your time deposit, and you will be adding this time deposit in order to achieve at your figure for M3, that is broad money. Now when we talk about time deposit, mostly we also know that FD and RD are the 2 major components for your time deposits, but along with that you must remember that the time liabilities portion of saving bank deposits is also one of the criteria while we define the time deposits. And in the question, in the examination, the examiner can ask you, or they can give a particular component based on the saving banks component for the time deposit. So you have to add that as well. Next, when we talk about M4, so M3, along with that you will be adding up the post offices component, and the component will not only be including the time deposit saving but entire deposits of your post offices, except for 2 things. One, NSC, that is National Savings Certificate. Secondly, the Kisan Vikas Patra. Only these 2 will be excluded. What is the reason of the exclusion? Because they have the maturity date beyond 6 years. So till 7 years, 8, 9, 10 years, you have the maturity date, and they do not reflect the actual figure for the money supply of the country. Fine. So this was it for the measures of money supply when we talk about various parameters which are important for the examinations. And for your reference, what I have done is given you a quick chart. From here you can just revise like the important ones. M0 is not given because mostly question is not asked from there. Quick revision: M1 will be what? Currency with the public plus net demand deposit. So currency with public plus demand deposits plus other deposits held by the RBI, PDR, like that. Try to learn via mnemonics. Try to retain the formulas for any kind of formulas using mnemonics. So PDR is M1. When I talk about M2, so in PDR I will be adding the component of savings for post office. Okay, for post office. Then M3, for M1, whatever the component was, you will be adding only one thing, that is the time deposit. So PDR plus T will be the M3. For M4, you will be adding what? You will be adding M3, along with that the entire deposits of your post offices. And what will be the exclusion here? NSC and your Kisan Vikas Patra. Okay. So what do we mean by interest? Everybody is either paying
certain kind of interest to a particular financial institution, or they are enjoying the benefits of the rate of interest. You are paying when you have a particular loan, but you are enjoying the rate of interest when you have certain deposit account with the bank. So how to calculate this interest is the major issue which will be addressed by this particular chapter of theories of interest. When I talk about the basics of interest, we'll be starting off with that, and then in this particular video we will be switching on to chapter's most important discussion, that is classical economists point of view of attaining a particular rate of interest. So what do we mean by interest? It is basically a payment made by a borrower for the use of a sum of money for a particular period of time. It is one of the four types of income. When we talk about the factor of production, it produces four type of income, including rent, wages, and profit. And one of the factor is your, or you can say income is your interest. Whenever we are calculating the rate of interest, we must factor in the inflation as well. Otherwise, we won't be able to get either the benefit of the rate of interest, or for that matter, won't be able to enjoy whatever we have deposited. Just imagine the FD, which is having a rate of interest, let's suppose 7% right now, and over a period of time, the government says that okay, only 3% will be the rate of interest of the FD. Do you think that anybody will be investing in such instruments? Answer will be no. So three elements that can be distinguished in interest. What are these? First of all, the risk involved. You must acknowledge the fact that the banks are providing certain amount via loans, and they are having certain risk that whether the money will be back in the banking system or not. So a risk is involved. For that, interest is legitimate. Payment for the trouble involved, trouble in the sense if the recovery is there, you have to manage. As a bank, you need to manage some other things as well. So that is the trouble which is involved, and you deserve the rate of interest, some kind of perk. Next, pure interest, that is a payment for the use of money. You are not, you know, the money with the RBI. I'm talking about the banks, right? The banks are not keeping the money with the RBI and not earning an interest. What they are doing, they are providing with money so that you can use, and they must have certain basic interest that is known as the pure interest. When we talk about the pure interest, it is payment for the use of funds. No additional, you can say, fee, or for that matter, any charges are being in. Once we add these fees and charges, we arrive at the gross interest. Okay. So gross interest includes the net interest. Along with that, you have the insurance against the risk involved of lending, plus reward for the inconvenience of that particular amount. Along with that, we also have the expenses over management services. So how you are managing the entire amount which you have provided to a particular customer, that also entails to certain, you can say, expenses as well, and you will be recovering all these via charging a gross or market interest rate by the customer. So it includes pure interest plus risk premium and admin expenses, all the fee and charges. When I talk about factors of production, here you must focus on four factor of production, that is capital, entrepreneurship, labor, and land. But for our chapter, focusing here only. That is for establishing a particular factory so that you can produce certain goods and services. You need bare minimum four components. Land you require to establish an industrial unit, labor you require for working in that unit, capital you require so that you can have the investment there, plus entrepreneurship, the idea, a distinguishing factor as compared to the other, you can say, industries in your area. So for land, when we talk about it, will give what rent, labor entails wages, capital provides us with the income of interest, and entrepreneurship will give profit as the income. So when we talk about interest, it is an outcome of capital. What is capital? Capital is nothing but an investment. Fine. One investment is there, and this particular investment either in the form of loan or for that matter already have certain amount of money. When you are providing it via loan, then it is what rate of interest will be charged by this particular entity, that is bank. If you have money with you and you are providing it as a capital to some other businessman, then you will say that this particular money I will be charging some rate of interest. Fine. So interest is a particular income via capital. And one more additional information for all of you. If you club all these incomes, na, rent, wage, interest, and profit, you will arrive at one of the approaches to define the GDP of a country via income method. Nothing but income method. We are talking about income method in unit number 18, but yes, this will be again discussed when we will be doing the unit 8. Fine. So now let's move on to the actual topic, that is rate of interest. So these are two, classical and economics theory. In the classical economics, you will find that the classical economists were of a view that no government interference must be there. Let it be whatever is there, laissez-faire. Laissez-faire means what? Let it be. We need not to change anything. We need not to have any kind of interference from government or for that matter any other agency except for the market. So the market forces will be determining your rate of interest. Okay, that is the main, you can say, finding from the study which classical economists have conducted. On the other hand, Keynes, the well-known or the most renowned economist of our 20th century, he will say that government spending increases the aggregate demand in the economy, and that is why there must be a role of government in our economy. When we talk about the unemployment and inflation, so classical economists are more towards inflation. They think that there is no unemployment. Everybody has a job, so there is no need to create new jobs. There is no need to create new resources. All we have to do is talk about inflation and manage that. But J.M. Keynes will say we must create jobs because under an idealistic situation only everybody has a job. But in the real world, unemployment is going on and it is having huge numbers. After that, once we have addressed this issue, you can move to inflation. Price and market influences. So, as the classical economists do not want any government interference, what they will be saying that market is free and demand and supply itself will create whatever their demand is or whatever the supply is and ultimately determine the rate of interest. When we talk about Keynes, he will say that government must maintain price stability and it must not be done by the market forces. Now let's talk about classical. This particular theory has been developed and modified by Alfred Marshall, Irving Fisher, and Arthur Cecil Pigou. So the name of these economists is important. IBF has this habit of asking the questions based on plus along with that it also has the full form. So you must remember the most important ones when we talk about classical theory of economists given by gentlemen. So Alfred Marshall, Irving Fisher, and your Arthur Cecil Go. So what does this theory tell us? Simply stated, this theory will be showing us the mechanism via which rate of interest is determined. It will talk about two things: one demand, another supply, which we have studied in the previous. So demand will be done by those who want to have the investment. Fine, they want some investment for their business, so they will be demanding the money. We are talking about money. Fine, money. But the classical economists will say not money. Always they will say savings. Okay, but from where this savings is coming, how this is being spent, nobody will be talking, and that is the major criticism of the classical theory. So demand will be there for the savings by the investors. Supply will be done by the individual. individuals or the business entities who have saved the funds. So supply of savings will be ensured by these individuals or the business entities, and demand will be done for these savings, whatever they have saved, by the investors. Okay, so demand and supply theory is simply that only. When you talk about the capital theory, under this classical theory only, you have various theories. So one is demand and supply, which is this the simple one. Then capital theory, what is the productivity of capital? How productive is your capital? When I talk about the productivity, if you are supposingly having an investment of, let's say, 100 crore from the bank, and you will be paying certain interest also on this particular amount. So you have a capital of, let's suppose, 100 crore plus this additional interest will also be paid. After investing this much amount in your business, what kind of profits you are making? If your business is profitable and meets your expectation, you will say that the productivity of capital is high. Otherwise, it is not. So capital will be having certain, you can say, components. So capital supply is regulated by the thrift, that is savings, or the time preferences, whereas capital demand is determined by the productivity of capital. How productive is the capital once you utilize it? Only then you will tell whether it is productive or not. Next, savings investment theory of interest. Here, the simple funda will be that real factors will be determining your savings as well as the further investment. What are the real factors you are saving and investment only? When we talk about in the real world, in the real economy, you will have only two factors. One, savings will be done, and these savings will be invested. Simply stated, you need not to see for the source of the savings. Nobody is talking about the level of income, but when specifically talk about the level of income. For classical theory, what you have to remember, savings and investment are the only two parameters. The real theory of interest, as interest is real phenomena based on your real factors, that is saving and investment, that is solely determined by the real factors of supply and demand for capital under the perfect competition. So only the demand and supply will be at play. And when we talk about the crux of all the have discussed, and which will ultimately form the classical theory of rate of interest, you have to remember only two things. One, supply of savings, fine, supply of savings. Another one, demand of savings. That is it. The question can be asked from either of the two components. So when we talk about supply of savings, it is directly proportional to the rate of interest, because as the rate of interest will be increasing, people will be more inclined towards saving more. Like suppose the government announces today that the FD rate of interest will be high for the upcoming 2 years. So you will start saving. Definitely, that's the natural instinct. But whether entire economy will be doing that, that's a different story altogether. And James will criticize this particular theory of classical economists on this basis also, that nobody will be saving the amount if they do not have the amount. If they do not have the income, how they will be saving? But according to classical economists, as soon as rate of interest is high, saving will increase. Okay, so we have to read everything, whatever is being mentioned by the classical economists. That is why when we talk about the relationship between interest rate and savings, so as the real interest rate increases, you will see the increase in the volume of savings as well. And when we talk about savings, they entail to what? Certain sacrifice. You have not spent some amount, you have saved that, you have sacrificed something, performed abstinence. Abstinence in the form of not shopping for anything would have if you are not having this instinct, or patience which you have shown. You delayed your requirements, you delayed your purchases. Instead, what you are doing, you are saving. So when we talk about the interest, it will be the reward for your waiting or abstinence. And the graph between the interest rate and savings will be sloping upwards. Always remember the direct relationship between the rate of interest and supply of savings will be there. That's why the graph will be sloping upwards. When we talk about the demand for savings, so when the demand will be high when the rate of interest charged on that particular amount is lower. So lower the rate of interest, higher the demand, and that's why we say demand of savings have what a an inverse relationship with rate of interest. That is why your graph is downward sloping. So demand of savings find a downward sloping curve. Will be from where the demand will be from the producer or the investors who want to invest in their business. And when we talk about the demand for saving, what is the most important point here? That the capital demand curve will be sloping downwards towards right. And when the equilibrium will be attained, as we have seen demand and supply, the equilibrium will be that point where the demand for saving and the supply of saving. So this rate of interest where the suppliers are also happy with the rate of interest and the people who are demanding the investment, they are also happy with the rate of interest. We will have what your equilibrium interest rate. For this case, it is what 15%. Fine.
When I talk about the overall agenda in this particular unit, that is unit 19th, if you are following the IIBF Macmillan publication book, you will find four topics, more or less four elaborately discussed topics, starting off with the objective of fiscal policy in India. You must be knowing that in India we have two types of major economic policies, one being the monetary policy being governed by the RBI. Second one is your fiscal policy, which is governed by the government policies, all those policies which the government takes so that our country can have the economic growth as well as development. So what are the objectives of fiscal policy? Mind it, union budget is a part of fiscal policy only. Revenue and capital account, how we distinguish between these two accounts and how they are related to the union budget. Then we have receipts and expenditure. Obviously, when we talk about the government, it has two sources from which the expenditure will happen, two sources from which revenue will be coming. And when we discuss elaborately the components, you will be able to understand how things will pan out. Receipt will be what? Added to the government's account. Expenditure will be subtracted from the government's account. That is the basic thing which everybody must be knowing. Last topic will be FRBM Act, that is Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act. Why do we need this act? What was the reason for this act being enacted in the parliament way back in 2002-2003? That is the major area where you must focus on if you are studying on your own. Today we will be highlighting the basics of fiscal policy, that how the fiscal policy is different from the monetary policy. Along with that, certain basics of union budget, the date when it is presented, how it is different from the scenario which was prevailing till 2016. And lastly, we'll be looking into the receipts portion of union budget. So let's start our discussion with the fundamental difference between monetary and fiscal policy. So in the previous units, that is unit number 17th, you must have learnt this part, that is the monetary policy, a basic, a fundamental economic policy via which RBI tends to monitor and manage inflation levels in our country. So when I talk about monetary policy, it is governed by the actions of central bank of a country. In our case, it will be Reserve Bank of India. On the other hand, when we discuss the fiscal policy, you must be very clear that Government of India via the Finance Ministry will be governing all those actions which are taken for the economic policy for growth and development of our country via fiscal policy. Then what is the basic aim? Why do we need an economic policy known as monetary policy? To curb the inflation levels which are there. Right now, when we talk about the latest trend, retail inflation stands at 2.1% according to the latest data. For economic growth along with development, fiscal policy is the one which will be targeted by the government. How the monetary policy will be taking care of this particular level of inflation, whether it is rising or not. So RBI says that 4 plus minus 2% will be the benchmark beyond which if the inflation is falling, then it is a cause of concern and we will manage that. using the financial management. And what is exactly the financial management when we talk about the fiscal policy? It is nothing but the tools of monetary policy, like the interest rates, how we manage the interest rates, how we manage the repo rate, reverse repo rate, liquidity adjustment facility overall, plus along with that CRR, SLR, all these things clubbed together will be known as the financial management tools for the RBI, via which it will be controlling the inflation. When I talk about fiscal policy, more or less it will talk about the government's earnings in the form of revenue and the spending of government in the form of expenditure. Clubbed together, they will form what? This is also a very simple definition for union budget. So the most important part of the fiscal policy is union budget, which is an overall chapter in our syllabus, unit number 19 for JAIIB. Okay, so before dwelling deep into the union budget, let's see what are the objectives of fiscal policy. Simple objective is to have a particular number in the mind, that is GDP, fine. GDP growth must be there. Along with that, some social objectives must also be met via various you can say subsidies which the government will be disbursing, and they will form the part of expenditure of the government. So primary and additional objectives, two types of objectives, you can bifurcate them into. Primary is promoting the economic growth, basically having the GDP numbers in mind and trying to achieve these numbers. When we talk about the GDP calculation, we have seen that in unit number 18th, but the projections which we right now have, they are somewhere between 6.2 to 6.4, which includes the World Bank as well as IMF projections also. What is the exact number for the financial year? We will be looking into that also in upcoming months. But right now you can assume the level of GDP to be somewhere around 6.2 to 6.4%. Maintaining the price stability in the economy. Now you will say that price stability more or less it entails to the monetary policy also, because inflation is what? You are managing the price rise. But once RBI has managed the price rise, you need to give it stability, and that particular stability will be given via the fiscal policy. How it is implemented? Via various components. Additional objectives are mobilizing the resources. This is consistent with the social objective of the government, that is, you can say social welfare, giving the resources to all the people, to all the citizens, and especially the people who are living in the backward areas or the remote areas of our country. Promoting allocative efficiency. You are allocating the resources, which is the fundamental objective of studying economics. Why? Because economics is what? It is a particular study which we make so that we can manage the scarce resources. So allocating those resources is one of the objective of fiscal policy. Reducing inequality in income and wealth, again social welfare. The data states that 10% of our population, it holds 57% of the entire nation's wealth. So this inequality must be curbed by the fiscal policy. Promoting private sector investment is also an objective under the fiscal policy. How the government will be promoting the private sector investment? Via liberalization. In 1991, everybody knows that the economic reforms happened, and ultimately it led to liberalized laws so that the foreign investors can directly invest in our country. So overall, these are the objectives of fiscal policy. Now let's see what is particularly a union budget and why it is known as union budget. Why not budget? Because in India we have state budget also. For the respective states we will be having different state budgets, but we are here concentrating only on the center's budget because some aspects are there in the state's budget which are not included in union budget and vice versa. And when I talk about the overall components, they will more or less remain the same, but the specific components pertaining to a specific state might differ. So we'll be focusing on union budget only. And when we talk about union budget, what has changed over a period of time? Since 2016, some changes have been made, some fundamental changes like presentation of the budget. Although earlier also it was made in the parliament, but now the date has been changed. Earlier rail budget was presented separately, on the same day when the union budget was presented. Now it has been clubbed and it has become a part of union budget only. So what is union budget? Annual budget of the country is known as union budget, presented by union finance minister. It was being presented on the last working day of February. Earlier, till 2016, it was presented on 28th or 29th Feb. If it is a leap year, then the date will change. So like that it used to happen. But now it will be presented always, remember, on 1st of February. That is the shift, the number one shift, or you can say the initial push which the government wanted to give to all the states in the country so that the resources can be more efficiently allocated, since we have more time now. If we look into the time gap, 27-28 days, we do not feel that it is too much. But when it comes to the ground reality, it might create a huge difference. Then that was the only reason why it was shifted to 1st of Feb. The rationale behind this change is that it provides time to the government to implement it from the 1st April when the new financial year starts. So entire Feb is there, March is there, implementation will be done from the April. Another change which has been introduced from the year 2017 is that rail budget, which was earlier presented separately by the Union Railway Minister, has now been merged with the Union budget. All of you, I hope, being a banker or aspiring bankers for DBF candidates, I am saying, you must be well versed with the Union budget which was presented this year. What are the major changes which have been done? Everybody knows about the salary part, that yes, the exemptions have been made, they have been lifted to a particular limit. But when it comes to the banks, what is there specifically for the banks in this year's budget? Do let me know in the comment section. One important, very important aspect is there for the banking sector. I want everybody to comment, whosoever is watching this video, in the comment section, that what is that important component which was presented by the finance minister in this year's budget. Okay, so enough of the introduction, I think, of union budget. Now let's move on to the actual thing which will create the difference, which will enhance your knowledge about the union budget. In front of you, you can see a particular flow chart which talks about various type of accounts, various type of receipts, expenditure, further classification of receipts, or you can say revenue has also been done. Now what are these? Let's see one by one. Whenever I talk about the budget, always remember or try to correlate it with a particular wallet that the government holds. Okay, I always give this example to my students, that let's suppose government has a particular wallet, that is W, in which it will be having what? It will be having various, you can say, sum of money from various sources. So a particular wallet of government, let's assume this to be the budget. Okay, this is the budget of the government. In this wallet, there are two sources from where the funds will be flowing, in as well as out. So we can assume that a particular person, individual, is having a wallet, and the person is having two accounts in two different banks. One particular account is known as the revenue account. Another account will be known as the capital account. Okay, so there are two types of accounts which the government holds. And why it holds two different or separate accounts? Revenue account specifically talks about the spending or the earnings of government for the time period less than 1 year. So within 1 year, if the government is spending some money from an account, or the government is earning something in that account, it will be reflected in the revenue account. Always remember, it is revenue account. And when I talk about the capital account, all those earnings, all those spendings which the government will be doing beyond 1 year, it will be covered under the capital account. Now what are the examples? By examples you can understand better. When I talk about the revenue account, the government being one of the employer also of the government employees, it will be disbursing salaries on monthly basis. via revenue account. When we talk about the investments which the government is making for a longer period of time, let's say 10 years, it will disburse the funds from the capital account like that. Okay, now revenue account has two heads. One will be the revenue, another one will be the expenditure. Similarly, capital account also, it will have one head as the revenue, from where the money will be earned. So the money will be added in the account, and expenditure, that the money will be gone or spent via this particular head. Revenue plus expenditure minus. Now next scenario which you have to understand, it is for understanding only, is that revenue part entails to two subsections or subcategories when I talk about the revenue account. You can call the revenue as receipts also if you are getting confused between the revenue account and the revenue expenditure. This is the name of the account. This is what? This is the earning. So when I talk about the revenue account, in this particular account, some receipt will be there, some revenue will be earned by the government via taxes, and the remaining portion of this particular receipt or the revenue of the revenue account will be from the non-tax sources. So both these club together, tax sources, non-tax sources, you will get the revenue or receipt part of the revenue account. But when I talk about the capital account, here there are again two categories. One, if you are earning some kind of capital which is creating a debt on you, like Government of India has taken advances, fine, from the IMF during COVID era, that particular amount will be credited on a particular date, supposingly in you can say 2021, that particular amount was credited to the account of Government of India, where it will be reflected in capital account, since it is a lending given to India for a longer term. So capital account, where in capital account? In the revenue part, because it has been added. So try to understand and tell me whether the loan which India has taken from the IMF, it will be returned ultimately to the IMF along with the interest payments or not. So today, if the IMF has credited some amount in the capital account of the government, will it be there only for a longer duration of time and no obligation is there, or for that matter, do you think that it has created a debt? So definitely it will be a debt creating revenue for the Government of India. On the flip side, when we talk about a scenario where India provided loan to Sri Lanka, I hope that everybody remembers 2-3 years back, economic crisis hit the neighboring country of ours, that is Sri Lanka, and the Indian government lent a helping hand to the government, and it lent huge amount of money. Now after 3 or 4 years, if the Sri Lankan government is repaying the loan to our country back to the account, that is the capital account of Government of India, it will be reflected in capital account. It will be in which head? Revenue head, because the amount has been added. But since it is a payback from the Sri Lankan government, it will be directly reflected into the non-debt category, because it is not creating any debt, it is the India's money. The Indian government will be the sole owner of that particular money. That is why it will be included in the non-debt category. I hope that this particular entire chart is clear to you, because ultimately if this is clear, then only cramming is left. This was the part which you need to understand in order to get the feel of budget, the union budget, for that matter state budget also, but yes, specifically we are talking about the Government of India's budget here. Fine. Okay, so if you have any kind of doubt, don't hesitate, just ask me in the comment section. So when we talk about the formulas which are important for the examination, there are 2 or 3 formulas which will be asked in the exam because regularly IIBF has this habit of asking such questions. When I talk about such two formulas, one being the formula for revenue deficit, another being the formula for fiscal deficit. Although revenue deficit has been terminated from the Indian economy's parlance, because now we use the fiscal deficit as the benchmark for undertaking various scenarios for the economic growth of our country, but still IIBF can ask you the revenue deficits formula as well. So revenue deficit formula simply includes what? It will be including the revenue part of the budget, the revenue account. So when we talk about the revenue receipts from the revenue account, so total revenue expenditure minus total revenue receipt, only this portion, the upper one, which is included in the revenue account only. It will not talk about the capital account. Fine. This is the portion which is specifically for what? For calculating the revenue deficit. Okay. So revenue receipts minus expenditure will give you what? The revenue deficit. But since capital account is an integral part of the entire union budget, we have a specific formula for that, which is the fiscal deficit. It is the overall excess of the revenue, if any, as compared to the expenditure of the government of India. Formula will be total expenditure minus total revenue excluding the borrowings. So when I talk about these two accounts, the entire amount of revenue, that is total revenue, will be calculated from these accounts. It will be subtracted from the expenditure which you are doing as a country. And this particular expenditure is having a part which is known as the borrowings. Or to state it simply, you can reverse this particular formula also, so that you can easily understand what we are talking about. Let's write it in a better manner, which will be, in the revenue and the capital account, you will have certain part of revenue which includes the borrowings. So first of all, from your overall revenue, you exclude the borrowings. Then only you will get the exact picture, because these borrowings will be reversed back to the sourcing country. So it cannot be held for a long time period. It will be returned to the respective country. So first of all, remove or exclude the borrowings from the revenue portion. You will get the exact or the effective revenue for our country, and then simply subtract it from the expenditure.